You can untangle a complex merger, map out a 3-year strategic pivot, or debug thousands of lines of code. But sitting down to read a single dense document for 20 minutes often results in a total mental block, jamming the process entirely. Most people assume this is a discipline problem. When you are highly capable, you naturally expect to be able to simply command yourself to sit still and execute a task. So when you inevitably abandon that primary task to check a Slack thread or open a new browser tab, the immediate reaction is self-blame. You tell yourself you are slacking off or losing your edge. Framing focus failure as a moral shortcoming hides the actual mechanics of the problem. This is a system bottleneck. The system architecture is being asked to perform beyond its current capacity. The difficulty in maintaining attention reflects a literal shortage of bandwidth. Processing power has been fully committed elsewhere, making motivation secondary to the reality of resource allocation. Your brain is biologically attempting to run too many competing background processes at exactly the same time. Look at this diagram representing working memory. Every unwritten task, unresolved decision, and half-formed idea you carry in your head requires continuous processing power, actively siphoning your finite mental resources. Trying to force your way through depleted mental bandwidth with sheer discipline is like pressing the gas pedal on an empty tank. The fuel required to move the vehicle is no longer present in the system. Here's what's interesting about that bandwidth limit. A higher level of intelligence actually makes sustained single-tasking more difficult. This visualization illustrates how a sharp analytical mind processes information. It takes a single input and naturally generates branching connections, secondary threads, and alternative scenarios. Generating dozens of possibilities from a single prompt is an immense asset for strategic planning, but it becomes a liability when you need to ignore those exact competing thoughts to finish a routine task. Your brain is perfectly fine. You are simply running expensive, resource-heavy cognitive software on limited working memory hardware. The exact cognitive trait that drives success in high-level strategy becomes the primary obstacle to your routine execution. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. It is a biological mechanism where the brain categorizes every unfinished task as an active, running process. The evidence is mixed on the exact storage limits of human working memory, but the baseline is clear. Incomplete tasks continuously demand periodic attention. Carrying multiple unclosed loops forces the brain to constantly switch context back to unresolved issues, fragmenting attention. Attempting to force focus on a single task without closing these background loops causes internal noise to grow progressively louder. The cognitive load of carrying a purely internal, unwritten to-do list consumes significantly more bandwidth than the distraction of external digital noise. Regaining control over analytical focus means learning how to close these psychological loops, rather than trying to block out the external world. This explains why rudimentary advice, like silencing your phone or turning off notifications, fails for complex analytical minds. The real competition for your attention is entirely internal. It is the unfinished conversation you need to have, the decision you are avoiding, or a vague anxiety that something else requires your attention. No digital app blocker or noise-canceling headphone can silence the unfinished threads running in the background of your own mind. Treating an internal bandwidth crisis with external environmental controls misdiagnoses the poor problem. The solution requires a biological intervention called cognitive offloading. This is a process designed to force your brain to release its grip on active threads. This is separate from standard task organization or prioritization. The sole purpose of offloading is to definitively signal to your brain that a task has been captured, allowing it to let go. The protocol works like this. Immediately prior to beginning a deep work session, spend exactly 2 minutes dumping every unorganized open loop onto a piece of paper. If you take one thing from this, before your next deep work session, spend 2 minutes dumping every open loop out of your head and onto paper. It's not organized, it's not prioritized, it is just out. See what happens to your focus after that. Cognitive offloading functions as a clearing mechanism for working memory. It manages the high overhead bandwidth common in analytical minds.